you so much. Wow. It's so good to be here, by the way. Did anyone go to Lori's talk, by the way, this morning? Yeah. Oh my God, I heard it was absolutely amazing. Lori works at Gatsby, and Gatsby's kind of like the hero of the show of this presentation I'm about to give. So, wow, maybe if you saw her, you might have got a bit of a preview. Anyway, so my name's Kyle Boss, and I am a web developer at Tinder. I live in Los Angeles, and I flew in this morning at like 1 a.m. So excuse me if I'm a little bit slow with my words or saying a lot. Just kidding. Well, yeah, also sorry for that too. So I live in LA, and I went to UC Berkeley. That's where I got my computer science degree. And after I graduated, I moved to LA and absolutely loved the sun and stuff. So I kind of stayed out there and found my way at Tinder. Now, how many of you know of Tinder? A lot. And how many of you know of it as the mobile app? Same amount. Yeah, so that's actually good news. We are a mobile app. In fact, what's really crazy to think about is that we are the #1 mobile app in the lifestyle category right now in both iOS and Google Play, which is like incredible to think about because we're only a few hundred people. I think we're not even at 500 employees yet. So it's really crazy to just think about how much impact Tinder has had. However, we are not just a mobile app anymore. We are now a progressive web app. So you can go to Tinder.com and find the love of your life there as well. Which also means, by the way, you don't have to delete any photos to make space for us. You could just go to Tinder.com in your browser and find the love of your life there. Naturally, that means you could do it at your desktop at home or at work. And we don't judge. In fact, we've made a feature for you called work mode. So if you are multitasking and swiping right or left at your job, and you feel like your boss is behind you, you can click that work mode button, and then bam, your whole screen will turn into like a whole bunch of Excel spreadsheets. So, unless your boss also uses Tinder, then he or she will know exactly what this is. So that won't help in that case. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because we are hiring for web devs. So we are looking for web developers, web designers, PMs, and yes, app developers, iOS, Android. So if you like what you see in this talk and this is what you want to do for your day job, feel free to send me an email and we'll see if we're a match, okay? And I'll give you my email at the end. So I remember my first day on the job. I've only been working at Tinder for about a year and a couple months now. And on my first day, my boss, his name is Eric, pulled me aside. And Eric was like, Kyle, come with me. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm going to learn all of Tinder's deepest, darkest secrets, like, you know, the first day jitters. And he sat me down in this room and he said, Kyle, nice to meet you. Your first project is going to be working on a WordPress blog called Swipe Life. And immediately my heart kind of sank. WordPress, oh my God. I don't know PHP. My interview last week was in React, and I was starting to freak out. And I think he saw this look on my face, and he's like, no, it's totally gonna be okay, Kyle. We chose WordPress on purpose. We chose WordPress because it empowers our writers to write blog articles efficiently and effectively. It's made by writers, for writers. And you know, honestly, a lot of writers, when they go to a lot of gigs, they use WordPress. And so we want to make sure our writers were empowered to write articles and that they felt like at home when they were writing this content for Swipe Life. And that totally made sense. However, it just kind of, you know, it sucks a little bit as a React developer that you'd have to use PHP, right? However, that's not necessarily the case. One solution could be using React as a front end and using our WordPress API to treat WordPress as a back end. So maybe every page the user goes to, let's say they go to a post, we can just make an API call to our WordPress. Because WordPress has a pretty robust API. All of its public posts are available in a JSON format inside of their API, so why not just use it? This does come at a little bit of a cost, though, right? You have the latency of calling WordPress each and every time you have a new WordPress post that you're trying to get to. By the way, this paradigm exists today. If you want to try it, it's called building a headless CMS. It's called using WordPress headlessly. And a CMS that's going headlessly just means that it's going to manage all of your content. It's going to do exactly what WordPress does. It's gonna have some fields for your writers to put in a title, to put in a featured image. However, your WordPress isn't gonna use the front end feature. You're basically taking the front end and putting it somewhere else. Now, at Tinder, we ran with this headless CMS idea, but we decided not to have a dynamic website. We decided to have a static one, and we used a tool called Gatsby. Now, Gatsby, for all intents and purposes, is called a static website generator. And that is a very powerful phrase, static website generator, because at the end of the day, you will get a static website. However, I kind of think that static website generator is kind of like an understatement, because Gatsby does so much more. In fact, it's gonna act as our bridge between our React app and our WordPress app, okay? And throughout the rest of this presentation, I'm going to be talking about what Gatsby does, how to use Gatsby, some of the problems that we faced, because Gatsby is so new, it's cutting edge. And that means you're gonna run into some cutting edge issues, right? And we're gonna talk about how we at Tinder solved those problems that we faced, all right? Okay, exciting. By the way, this is a full room. Thank you so much for coming. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so to begin with Gatsby, you have to first install it. It's a node module, it's an NPM module, and you can install it using NPM, we like Yarn, Yarn global add Gatsby CLI. And once that's on your desktop, you can now use the famous first command that everyone uses with Gatsby, Gatsby new. And what Gatsby new does is it creates a brand new React app for you, pre-installed with a lot of the Gatsby modules that you'll need to get started, and some Gatsby configuration files. Some people like to call this like a Gatsby app, but I kind of think that gave me the EBGBs when I first heard of it. All it is just a React app with some Gatsby config, okay? So now that you have a new React app, once you run Gatsby new, you're gonna go into that new directory that you now have because of Gatsby, and you're gonna open up Gatsby config. And what you'll see here is Gatsby config will be pre-populated with all the things you will need to get up and running successfully with Gatsby. It's kind of like a starter kit, if you will. One thing that I do want to touch on, though, is that there is a list of plugins. And these plugins are NPM modules. They're modules that Gatsby says, hey, if you want to have the great success, get up running really, really fast, here are the plugins you will need. For us, we wanted to add one very important one to that list. It's called Gatsby Source WordPress. And what Gatsby Source WordPress does is it tells Gatsby, hey, Gatsby, you're going to do everything that Gatsby does. You're going to create a static website and everything, but you're going to use this WordPress site where we put base URL, that WordPress site, as your backend. That's where you're going to fetch all of your information from, okay? Does that make sense so far? Perfect. So because it is a node module, you do have to install it. So yarn add Gatsby source WordPress. And once you do that, and complete some other configurations, which you will find out along the way, it's very different for every project, you are ready to build your website. And this is with a very powerful command called Gatsby build. Now, Gatsby build is incredibly powerful. It does a lot of stuff, especially if you add Gatsby source WordPress in that plugins list. And it will let you know that it's doing a lot of stuff because it will put it all out on the terminal, and if you're in Starbucks, they're gonna be thinking you're hacking the internet, especially if you have the, right? Yeah. So what Gatsby build does is incredibly powerful, and I'm gonna go through step by step what it does, and hopefully it'll be a little less vague when you run this on your own, okay? So the first thing that Gatsby build does is it's gonna call that WordPress API. It's gonna crawl it and call every single endpoint that it can. Some of these endpoints are hopefully gonna give it, hey, you're not authorized, like a 300 error, or 400, 500. Like, it's not gonna be able to hit every single endpoint for every single project. But it's gonna take all of that information, and it's gonna take it for itself. It's like Ariana Grande. It's like, I want it, I got it. You like my posts? Gee, thanks, just fetched it, you know? So it's gonna have a copy of your WordPress. And then it's gonna stuff it into a GraphQL service. So at the end of the day, you're gonna have a copy of your WordPress inside of a GraphQL service on your computer, okay? And that's really important because we're gonna go one step further and take that information from our React app. Our React app is gonna look at that GraphQL service, make some queries, and grab the information it needs and then display it, okay? So what does that post look like? What does our React app look like? This wouldn't be a tech conference without some code. So here's a little bit. No more than 11 lines, I promise. This is what our post component looks like. We are displaying title and content, which are natural WordPress API keys. We're displaying those title and content from that post from an object called data. And data is passed in to our post component via props. Now, how do we know what to pass data? How does data know that it has title and content? Well, at the bottom of this JavaScript file, we have a GraphQL query. So here we're just querying for a WordPress post, given a very specific ID, and we only want the title and the content. We could query for more. We could query for author. We could query for tags or category. But for this example, we just want title and content. And if you're not familiar, by the way, with GraphQL, it's totally fine. I think Gatsby is actually a very good gateway drug into learning GraphQL because you can do some really powerful things with GraphQL with some very simple queries, okay? And then if you want to get more complicated, more complex, you can expand upon your GraphQL query over time. But to get started, all you need is some simple GraphQL query knowledge. Anyway, so at the very end, what Gatsby is going to do is it's going to execute every single GraphQL query that it sees. It's going to take that information and give the results of those queries to the components that need them. And at the very end, you'll have a big React app. However, let's take a step back. This is everything we did so far with Gatsby Build. Like I said, it does a lot. So Gatsby went, crawled your API in WordPress, made a copy of it, and put it inside of a GraphQL service, and then you have a React app acting as a front end for your WordPress. We didn't use any PHP. So at this point, we have a React app acting as our front end. This is the power, this is the beauty, I think, in my opinion, of Gatsby. It is a static website generator, but it does so much more, right? So it does one more thing. It does the static thing. It takes your big React app and chops it up into a bunch of small HTML and JavaScript files, and you can do whatever you want with it. This is your production build. You can put it to S3. That's what we do. You can put it to Google Cloud or other static website hosts like Netlify and serve it there. So that is all with Gatsby Build. That's everything that it does. 3-4 simple steps. And on October 1st, 2018, we went live with that blog I was telling you about called Swipe Life. We made a whole bunch of smart components, and we pushed them to S3, and this is what we went live with. We went live with our dating app. Sorry, our dating blog. And Swipe Life is all things dating. We cover what to do, where to go on your first date, what to do if your first date's going bad, what to do if someone's ghosting you, which, by the way, happens all the time in online dating. Ghosting is not fun, neither in the career world. And we have a lot of good, fun, edgy, progressive content. The dating community buzzed about it. We have also video content. So JLo comes in every once in a while and helps our online users navigate the dating world. But my favorite talk is when these two guys who are from this show called Queer Eye, Jonathan Van Ness and Antonio, they came in and started critiquing other people's bad dating advice. Take a look.
Do some makeup, but don't go over the top. Touch up your roots. Blow dry your hair instead of ironing them poker straight.
If a man ever had the nerve to turn me down based off of the volume or lack thereof in my hair, I wish he would.
Get some Spanx or shapewear that makes you look more shapely in pictures. Wear some heels, because even if it's a portrait where you're just seeing this much, when you wear heels, your weight goes on your toes and it kind of elongates your whole body, even for a close-up. Look straight into the camera. When somebody's looking at your picture, it gives a feeling that you're looking straight into someone's eyes.
The last one was right. Everything else before that, like if you want a miserable relationship,
I
listen
felt
to what
attacked.
she said. No, that was outrageous.
That was a lot.
That was like Tinder in 1943. It's like, make sure your slippers are by the front door for him, and make
Right.
sure you don't talk too much.
Make
and
sure that you
don't
look
ask him
really
questions.
shapely. What if you're shaped like a rectangle? Embrace the rectangle.
She did hit the nail on the head with the photos, but up until then, it was all wrong.
So that's a little example of some of the content that we have. You can tell it's progressive, it's fun, it's really edgy sometimes. And it wasn't only the online dating community that was buzzing about Swipe Life. What was funny is that the tech community was also talking about Swipe Life. This was the first TechCrunch blog, the first of several that have been chatting about Swipe Life. I actually printed this one out and framed it. because it came out like a couple months after I joined Tinder, and I was like, oh my God, TechCrunch. They are talking about something that I touch, oh my God. Anyway, so TechCrunch talked about it, and one of my favorite things about Swipe Life in terms of the tech is our Google Chrome audit, or the Lighthouse audit. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Google Chrome audit, it's just something that is like a report card, tells you very objectively where you're doing well at with your website, what you can do better with, and very similar to a report card, it's not made to be something that you can just change overnight, something that you should just work towards over time, okay? When we went live with Swipe Life, this was our Google Chrome audit. We got 100 in SEO, 100 in best practices, a 98 in accessibility, and the one that really hit me the hardest, but in a good way, is the performance. We got a 98 in performance. And for me with performance, it's really tough to even get above an 80 for me. Yes, I can uglify the JavaScript. Yes, I can uglify the styles. But when to lazy load your images, what to defer, deferring which JavaScript and where, that really is an art, right? And something that you just work towards over time. Gatsby gives us 2 tools, though, out of the box that has really helped us with our performance score. And the first one is called Gatsby Image. And Gatsby Image, what it does is it optimizes all of your images. So for us, that means it's optimizing your WordPress images. It optimizes them for tablet, desktop, mobile. On top of that, on runtime, it lazy loads them. It loads them when they are only inside the viewport. So this makes your times interactive and your time to load that much faster. So take a look at this. This is what it actually looks like in real time. And for this video, I slowed down the internet to slow LTE, so you could actually see this blurring effect happen. So whenever there's a new image and it's fetched, it blurs in. On fast internet connection, you won't notice this blur in, by the way. Oh wow, there's Ariana Grande and our 2 guys from Queer Eye. Anyway, so that's what Gatsby Image does. It really helps out with performance significantly. The second tool I think is even more innovative. It's called Gatsby Link. And what Gatsby Link does is it looks at your user's cursor. And if your user's cursor hits a bounding box around any of your internal links, what Gatsby will do is it will pre-fetch those resources that the user would need. And so when the user clicks on that link, the resources are already there. So when you actually click on these links, it feels like you're clicking on files on your computer almost. Because for the most part, that's actually what you're doing. To demonstrate this, I opened up the network tab. Notice as my cursor is hitting these URLs, we're getting more and more calls. We're prefetching this data. Also, we're prefetching some of these images, or sorry, we're fetching some of these images. That's because of Gatsby Image, because they scrolled into the viewport. So Gatsby Link and Gatsby Image, those are 2 really powerful tools that you get with Gatsby out of the box that really helps with your performance. And your website's already static, but this makes it load 10 times, well, not literally 10 times, but a lot faster. So this is Swipe Life. Swipe Life is still going strong. We've been around for about a year. And if you too want to check out our online dating blog, feel free to go to our WordPress-powered blog, where our engineers didn't have to write any PHP, at swipelife.tinder.com. Now, I did want to give a big shout out to everyone out in New York. That's where our writers are. And if you really enjoy writing too, we're always hiring freelance writers or full-time writers. So feel free to let me know as well. We also have a lot of engineers out in LA and SF that worked really hard on Swipe Life. So I want to make sure that we give credit where credit's due. So they did an awesome job. Now, Swipe Life has been out for a year now, a year and 1 month. And it's been going swimmingly. However, in June of this year, a couple months ago, something really bad happened. It was kind of interesting. There was earthquakes in Ohio. There was like some New York floods. And I was reading these news articles about the earthquakes and the floods on one of those local news websites. They're like very blog-like. And when I was reading that article, all of a sudden, the news article changed to a succulent. Like, as I was reading it, succulent. And I'm like, wow, that's very, I hope you're not getting hacked website. So I went to a new website, another local news website, and that was already turned into a succulent. I went to TechCrunch, succulent. 9to5mac.com, succulent. All these blog-like websites were turning into plants. I went to Twitter, and Kyle Frost said it best. Today's a big day for succulents. For all you green thumb folks, today's a great day. And then he said hashtag WordPress. Here's why. That is your default theme when you get WordPress. And WordPress reverted, there's a premium version of WordPress, and that premium version reverted everyone's themes to the default succulent theme. This was in June, right before my mid-year review. So I freaked out a little bit. Oh my God, what is going on? What is Swipe Life coming to? I went to Swipe Life, and if I saw a succulent, that would be very bad. I'd be very sad. And this is what I saw. It did not turn into a succulent. We survived the succulent apocalypse, you guys. And why is that? Were we the chosen ones? Well, it's all because we use WordPress as a headless CMS, and we used Gatsby. Our WordPress was down. Our writers couldn't write, our editors couldn't edit. For all intents and purposes, no new content was being made for the day. It was down. However, our React app was still up and running. Our users could still go to swipelife.tinder.com and still read our content. For all intents and purposes, they could not tell that our WordPress was down. Now, for those of you keeping score, you're like, wait a second, we made all those API calls to WordPress. What gives? Like the whole Ariana Grande thing, like we made all those calls. What is going on here? What happened was on build time, we made those API calls. However, after build time, our website is static. All of our posts are represented inside of HTML and JavaScript files. On runtime, there's no calls to WordPress. So we're completely independent from it. And so when WordPress went down, we weren't really affected too much. So that day, I got to sit down and write a nice Slack message to everyone and say, hey, this is what's happening in WordPress community, and we weren't affected, and here's why. That's a very good question. We did have builds going through. We were still building, and they were failing. And for us, a failing build meant that our website wasn't updated. So we were protected by a failing build. So WordPress, Gatsby is pretty new. Gatsby's a few years old, if I'm not mistaken. And so it is cutting edge. And we do run into some problems time and time again with Gatsby. And because of that, I did ask the engineers on the team who decided to use Gatsby, hey, if you were to do everything again, take yourself back to September of last year before we chose Gatsby, what's something you wish you would have known before you chose it? And the results were pretty clear. There were 3 main themes, and I compiled them, and we're calling them Life Pro Tips for tonight. And they're things that if we would have gone back, we wish we would have known when we were planning, when we were making those story points. The first thing is you will get long build times if you're not careful. Yes, you're going to start with 3-minute build times using Gatsby. In fact, by the way, if you don't use Gatsby, with WordPress, your build time's 0. Like your changes are instantaneous. The moment you start using Gatsby, you're going to have a 3 to 4 minute build time put in there, right? As you get more and more content, your build is going to get longer and longer. It'll go to 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. And I'm very embarrassed, I guess, to say we hit the 3-hour mark. So whenever there was a typo, we would have to wait 3 hours before it would come into effect. And that is a time where we were like, all right, we need to change something. So there's 3 things you need to do to make sure you don't hit the 3-hour mark for build times. The first one is make sure you're at a newer version of Gatsby. Not the latest, definitely not. You'd never want to be on a beta version of any module, right? However, if you're at least at 2.15, because we're at 2.17 now, if you're at 2.15 at your Gatsby version, you should be fine. At 2.9, they started parallelizing the build. So it would start optimizing your images and building your static websites at the same time, okay? So before it was all serialized. It was all one after the other after the other. Now it's parallel. The second thing you can do is Gatsby is really nice to give you a cache directory at the end of every build. So at the end of every build, if you save that cache directory and then bring it back in on the next build, Gatsby's going to say, all right, I optimized all of these things already. I don't need to re-optimize them. Does that make sense? So on that note also, you want to make sure you resave that cache directory. Make sure that cache is still hot. And that will save you a lot of time. The third, and I think the most important, is on the WordPress side. Your writers might be uploading really large images. And that will affect you a lot. That's probably for us the biggest culprit to a long build time, is we had megabyte large images that were 3,000 pixels in length, and every single time we'd have to re-download these images and re-optimize them, and the bigger an image is, the longer it will take to optimize. By the way, we use Sharp under the hood. So Sharp takes a little while to optimize these images. If on WordPress, maybe you can install a plugin that auto-optimizes these images as they're uploaded. That way, when you run Gatsby build, it won't have to download megabytes and megabytes of images. It'll just be maybe a megabyte or two, and I don't know. But it will still optimize your images, and your download time will be a lot faster, right? And on top of that, your optimized time, and in the big scheme of things, your build time will be smaller. So that's number one. You're going to get long build times if you're not careful. If you follow those three things, your build times will shrink. We were able to get our build time, by the way, from 3 hours to 15 minutes using those three tips. So the second thing is a lot of folks actually have questions about updating and rebuilding. There's like a whole architecture you might have to build around Gatsby. So here's what our process looks like. Whenever we have an update to a published WordPress post, maybe we're fixing a typo, or maybe one of our posts is going from unpublished to published, or maybe one of our posts is going from published to unpublished. For those three situations, we trigger a post request over to API Gateway, because we are using a whole AWS environment. So we trigger a post request to API Gateway, which then kicks off our code build, AWS code build. And our code build does 3 commands. It pulls our latest code from our repo. So we have the latest like swipe life tech code. Second is it does a yarn install. So we have all the new node modules. And then third is we run that very big command, Gatsby build. So Gatsby build will finish, and it will have a static website at the output, and we will push that output to S3. And our S3 is a public website bucket, which will host our website statically. Okay? Now, I am very happy to say, too, we put it in front of or behind a CloudFront. So we are HTTPS because of that. And we also connected Lambda at Edge to our CloudFront. So we actually were able to do that using it, or we were able to internationalize Swipe Life. We have a French version of it now by connecting it to a Lambda at Edge. So we can see, all right, what's their accepted language, and do like a quick switcheroo and redirect them to swipelife.tinder.com/fr before it even hits the S3 bucket. So that's what our build process looks like. If you are making story points or you're trying to plan this out, make sure you plan for making the S3 architecture around it. So the third thing is there's no preview. This preview button here at the top right, that assumes you're using WordPress's front end. And that front end doesn't really work too well if you're using Gatsby. So you're going to have to roll your own preview of sorts. However, Gatsby also offers a paid preview feature. So if you don't want to roll your own preview and recode that preview changes button, Gatsby has a paid feature, which we rolled our own. And it took us a little bit of ingenuity to figure out how to make a preview and make it secure. And if you don't want to go through that, you always do have that paid feature option. So those are 3 kind of gotchas. And at the end of this, I think we'll have time for questions, but feel free to ask any more questions you might have on, is this production ready? Did you run into this situation? How'd you fix it? I'd be more than happy to answer. So before we go, I'd like to share one last personal story with everyone on how we use Gatsby. Tinder, a company built off of love and inclusion, we noticed that one of the emojis that's based off of love and inclusion was actually missing in the emoji Unicode registry. Take a look.
shadows slow through the neon glow. I follow you 'cause I don't know nobody loves you like I love you. Nobody loves you like I do. Nobody loves you like I love you. Nobody loves you like I do.
So we noticed that the interracial couple emoji was missing. We recently got skin tones for a lot of the other emojis, but the one where the hand-holding couple emoji and then the kissy emoji with the heart in between two people, that was missing skin tones. And so we realized this, and I was like, hey, we need to do something. Like, this is something that we could easily add to the emoji registry, the Unicode set. And so we decided to make a change.org petition. And immediately, people started signing it. People were really engaged with it. And that told us, like, oh my gosh, the world is excited about this. Like, we have a potential movement that we can make viral, and yay. Anyway, so we decided that we had something that we could potentially take to the next level. At the web team, we decided we wanted to make a viral landing page. We wanted to make something that we could develop incredibly fast, something that is also very scalable. We wanted to develop it fast because we wanted to make sure we went live with it before the excitement was moved on, right? Like, if we were making a website for Area 51 and the Area 51 event already happened, not really helpful, right? Same thing with scalability. We want to make sure it was extremely scalable because a lot of times websites can have not very many visitors, and all it takes is getting to the top page of Reddit or being put on, I don't know, a Super Bowl commercial, and then bam, everyone's going to your website. You want to be scalable because, does everyone remember what happened with MoviePass? The website, the day that I went down, or the day that I got really famous, everyone was going to it, and it essentially DDoSed itself. And we didn't want that to happen to ourselves, right? So we wanted to develop fast, and the solution behind that was not hiring more people. It was not getting more people onto the team. We decided we wanted to use React because that's the coding language that we know. We've done a lot of other websites in React, and it already fits nicely within our infrastructure. Making it scalable, though, that's slightly different. That's not as straightforward for us. In order to be scalable, we decided that we wanted to be serverless. And what serverless means is not that there's no server. It means that someone else is managing the server work. There's like all these server hoarders like Google or Amazon, and they're the professionals with servers, and they will be the ones that can automatically scale your stuff up or down and do all the configuration for you. And from my perspective, it doesn't feel like there's a server. It kind of feels like it's FTP, like S3, for example. So anyway, also, by the way, going serverless a lot of times is slightly cheaper, or maybe even significantly cheaper, depends on how you're using it, because you have the economies of scale working for you. If all these huge server companies have all these websites hosted, you're just a little guy being put on top. So you have the economies of scale working for you. So why doesn't everyone use serverless technologies? Your website has to be static to go serverless, and well, for us, that wasn't too much of an issue because we were using Gatsby, and Gatsby is a static website generator. So we used Gatsby to make this website, and we made it in 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks. And after 2 or 3 weeks of hard work getting the Gatsby website set up, we ended up getting a nice, very simple landing page. And by the time we had this landing page up, people were really, really excited about this movement. People were sharing it on Twitter, like, hey, these Tinder ads are really cute. We had a full-page ad in the New York Times talking about the Represent Love movement. And with this website and with the whole brand in total, we ended up winning something really special to my heart. We won a Webby Award. How many folks are familiar with Webby? Oh, awesome. And for those of you not familiar, because this is something that was new to me too, a couple years ago, I learned that the Webby Awards are kind of like the Emmys for websites, for the internet community. And instead of having an acceptance speech of 1 minute or 1 minute and a half where the mic starts going down to the ground, you're only allowed to say 5 words. For Tinder, we said, thank you for swiping right. Really cute 5 words. So we won a Webby Award, though, for this Represent Love movement. And we waited months and months and months. People kept signing this petition, and even if it was just for a second, it felt like everyone was united around this idea of interracial couple emojis. Everyone was really excited about it. And it was in March 5th of 2019, of this year, Unicode made a very exciting announcement, months of this campaign going out. The emoji was accepted by Unicode as an official interracial couple emoji. And this was exciting. That website went up, and it stayed up. It didn't go down because we were serverless, so it was able to handle all the traffic. We were able to get that website out fast, so we could catch it when the folks were still excited about the change.org petition. And finally, it was added to the Unicode set. We went full circle. And if you too would like to check out the emoji website, please check out emoji.tinder.com. It's fully made with Gatsby and is a perfect example of what you can do really, really fast with a Gatsby project. And I do have an addendum. I shared with you all of this today because just a week and a half ago, there was an iOS update. And if you downloaded it, that was the debut of the interracial couple emojis. And Gatsby was a big part of that. So. Thank you. And I do want to shout out to the marketing team did a fantastic job with this, making sure that the movement went worldwide. Gatsby was a very important part, but it took a village. So I did want to say thank you. If this stuff that you saw today was super exciting and you want to come work with Tinder, feel free to send me an email. My email is kyle.boss@gotinder.com. On the web team, we're working a lot with Gatsby, needless to say. We have a lot of projects going out. My inbox is always open, and feel free to slide into my DMs. It's like a Kyle boss. And I did want to leave everyone with one more tidbit of information. I did talk to a lot of folks preparing for this talk, a lot of companies, a lot of startups, a lot of folks who are really excited about the JavaScript community in general, about Gatsby. And what was really interesting is that people were saying, yes, Gatsby would probably solve a lot of our problems. However, a lot of people at the same time weren't ready just yet to adopt it, especially the bigger companies, right? And that makes sense, because bigger companies aren't usually early adopters. They like to see a product thrive and have a lot of success for years before they even think about adopting it. This is us coming out at Tinder, though, and saying, hey, we used Gatsby on some highly, highly visible projects, and we turned out okay. Our writers continue to use the tools that they love, WordPress, and our engineers, we don't have to use PHP. We can use React, right? And so if you see a blog coming your way at your day job, feel free to take this information with you. Please don't leave it at the conference. Talk to your team about headless CMSs. Tell them about Gatsby, because it saves you time, money, resources. And honestly, that's pretty priceless. All it takes is a little bit of innovation, right? So let's keep innovating. Thank you.